All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AmeriCorps Connections. No, I have not changed the above name, but I feel like that's just the right thing. That this is the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, where we get to catch up with AmeriCorps alumni to reflect on their service term and learn about what they're up to now. I'm Nikki Fiacco, an AmeriCorps state and national alumni who served 1 year through Volunteer Maryland. I'm motivated to do this podcast because I know how transformative my service year was to me, and how it wasn't only through my service that the experience was so transformational, but it was through the networking and connections that I've made along the way that have contributed and allowed me to grow in service and grow professionally and personally. So each week I get to have conversations with alumni who have served a service term or 2 or 3 or 4. And I'm finding out that there's all kinds of ways of staying in service, and listen to their experience and how they got them to do what they're doing now. And finally, it's my hope that through these conversations, we as an alumni start to really connect with one another and encourage others to serve, support those that are in service, and in turn to this network for professional opportunities, trainings, and other resources to share. I'd love to have regional meetups and special pop-up service projects where we can connect in person and support each other in the work that we're actually doing right now. So buckle up and get ready, because we're about to hear from another amazing service member and learn what she is up to now. So I would like to introduce everyone to Dana Buzzelli. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Yay. Who is an AmeriCorps alum, and I believe your service was NCCC City Year Cleveland.
Both.
With all of the
Yes.
above. So
All
since
the
I'm
above.
not doing your service year justice, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's talk about how you got roped into this AmeriCorps world that we're in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And
Yes.
yes, we usually talk about, oh yeah, my service year. And for me, it's like, well, which one?
My service life.
Which
Yeah.
era of service? Um, I I actually I think it's kind of funny to start off my story by saying, well, first I dropped out of college. um,
Wow.
and that is kind of simplifying the story, obviously, but I did have a we can call it a quarter life crisis or whatever, but I changed my major very dramatically. Right, I started out as a Chinese major, uh, which
Like
like I
Chinese language or Chinese
yes,
culture?
yes,
Okay.
yes, Mandarin, and that I speak Mandarin, and I was like, I'm going to do this as a career. I'm going to be a translator, and I had my godparents live out near Tacoma in Washington, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So like, we don't have mountains. We have beautiful, great the Great Lakes, but we don't have mountains. And so I was going out to visit them pretty often, and they took me on this hike in Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, and it was such an amazing experience for me that I remember just like standing there and like looking around and being like, I have to change my major. Like I need to work in something environmental. Like what am I doing with my life? Um and so mind you, I was already like halfway, I was already like 2 years into the whole experience, and I'm very impulsive. So I was just like, well, this is obviously I feel the calling. This is what I have to do, and I changed my major. And then, down the road, realized, okay, well, that means I'm not going to graduate in 4 years. That means, I realized the ramifications afterward, and
Right.
like 2 years afterwards, yeah. And I just kind of hit a wall, and I was like, you know what, I need to just take a break, or I need to get out of here. Because all my friends are graduating, and I was like, what am I doing? Oh my god. Not that I regretted the change. I was loving, the classes I was taking in environmental studies and natural resource management, but a friend of mine who I'm still in contact today, and she she inspired me essentially to service, and she served with I was going to school in Columbus, Ohio, and she served with City Year Columbus. And her first year with City Year was my kind of last year um, in school at that time. And I remember being on the phone with her, and she told me, and I'll never forget this for some reason. She was like, I just got done crying in the bathroom because this is so hard. And one of my students was being mean to me today. But I really care about them, and I'm not going to give up on them. And, I'm going to keep going, and and, and I was just like so inspired by her, and just, and I was like, tell me more about this whole, like, what is it
Yeah.
again that you're doing? And so we talked a little bit more about what's AmeriCorps, what is City Year specifically, working in the schools. And so that's eventually what I decided I was going to do. And so I left my bachelor's degree uncompleted and was like, peace out. I heard there's this program I can do where my loans will be postponed, and they'll pay me money that I can put towards my loans while I think about what I'm doing with my life. And I decided I wanted to go home, which for me is Cleveland, Ohio. So I went home to Cleveland to serve. Um,
I want to
and
just
for
put,
me,
I want to
uh-huh.
just real quick just point this out, because this is something that I'm in Maryland right now, and we just we have a new governor, Wes Moore, and he was tied into national service like years ago. I remember
Oh,
watching him
yeah.
a couple years ago speaking with Service Year Alliance and talking about national service in tandem with military service. Well, he's working on a proposal to have a year of service as an option for everybody who finishes high school. And I just think that you pointing out that like you went to college because that's like what we should do.
What we should do, right?
Yeah, it's what all these shoulds that are shooting on us. And then you turn to service to figure out what you wanted to do. And I just think that
Right.
that is like such an important message. If you guys tune out from this podcast, just take this with you. Like
You
that
listen to one thing I say.
if you listen to one thing that I tell you,
Yep.
you can really find yourself through service. And I don't know if it's because it's hard or you're just serving other people or what it is, but I just feel like there's just not this pressure of like, go through the classes and do the thing, to have the thing, to do the thing, to be the thing and everything. It's more of like,
Right.
you're in the community and you're doing the thing. And then everything just kind of opens up. So I'm sorry, I totally interrupted your train of thought, but I
No, no,
just
I'm
think that that
glad.
is so important that like,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing. And even if it's after high school or in college, or from my experience, I was 34 years old when I did my service year.
Yeah.
So it completely changed everything in my life and what I knew I could do. It gave me so much confidence to move forward and just try hard things. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, sorry about that.
No, no, I'm glad. And I need you to like steer the conversation as well too, because I like to just like ramble on down the road. But I do think that part of why this service was so attractive to me was because I was feeling um, just confused and isolated, and like, the focus was all on me. What am I going to do? What am I going to
Yes.
be when I grow up? What is like, and I think that's something across our American society with like all this focus on the individual. Service is an opportunity to see yourself as part of a whole, as part of a community, as part of like a contributing factor, instead of just, here's me going through like in a giant university, which like
Yes.
for some people can be a very like awesome collective and community oriented experience. But for me, I was so just like, what do I want to do? And again, having this crisis of like, did I pick the wrong thing? Should I have been doing this? I feel called to do this. And and feeling like my degree had to line up with what I felt called to do, which
Mhm.
now I tell people, I'm like, just get a degree in something.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not currently like you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
it doesn't exclude you. Like only in very particular
Fields. Right.
jobs or fields do you must you have a degree in a certain thing. And I'm like, well, if I had just, but that's a road I won't go down because this brought me to service.
Yep.
And so I went home to Service City Year Cleveland, and it was a very, just like my friend described on the phone, like I just got done crying in the bathroom, like this is hard. Um, and some days were great, some days were like breakthrough
For
days.
those that don't
But
know, for those that don't know what you do in City Year, I mean, I
yeah,
think I have an idea, like y'all are in schools, but if you could just say like a glimpse of a day in the life of a City Year AmeriCorps member.
absolutely, absolutely. And obviously need to like practice my elevator speech for City Year instead of just being like, it's really hard. So as a City Year AmeriCorps member, you are a student success coach. And so
Mm,
you work full time in the schools, but you're not a teacher. You're paired with a partner teacher, and you provide support in classrooms, out of classrooms. So it depends on the school, it depends on the grade level. I was working in a high school, so I worked with ninth graders, and I was partnered with an algebra teacher. So
oh, wow, that is
that
like a
was
perfect storm for,
it was
I'm
cool.
sorry, hell.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, obviously I was intimidated at first, but it you have some time to get acclimated to the school community, to the class you're working in, and eventually you formulate in collaboration with your manager, you formulate what we call a focus list. So these are
Mm,
students that you work with throughout the year, and City Year focuses on attendance, behavior, and coursework. And City Year's model is based around uh, targeting the schools and the students that are most likely to, or who statistically have shown the most likelihood to not end up graduating from high school.
mhm.
So the statistic, and I don't have it memorized. I should have prepped better for this, right?
That's okay. I'll find
Is
it.
that something like 60% of all high school dropouts come from only 4% of
Mm,
districts and schools. So there's it's like, okay, we want to target and be very data informed about where we work, the students we work with. So there's a lot of this data component of like, okay, analyzing um, the best way we can target, whether it's attendance, behavior, or coursework, or a storm of all three. How can we provide support at these key points along a student's high school journey that statistically indicates that they're more likely to graduate? So it's a really long way of saying that you spend all day, all week, these long service days in some of the highest needs public schools in the
yeah.
country.
Yeah. And you did that for a year with City Year?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, it was a 10-month service, so that was a full service year. And I had this really special experience of serving in the same school that my grandparents went to high school.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
cool.
yes, which was really a really cool experience. Um, but it I learned so much from City Year, and I think I was kind of testing the waters for myself in terms of, do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to go into education? Again, I was at this
Mhm.
juncture of like, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, but City Year made me realize that I'm not cut out to be a K through 12 teacher.
And that's
I was like,
so
wow, this is
valuable.
exactly like it's
Yeah,
good
that is
information.
valuable too, because I listen to these inspirational videos on all the time, and they talk about if you know what you don't want, you know what you want. And a lot of
That's so
times
true.
it's
Yeah.
easier to identify what you don't want. And so I was a director of an AmeriCorps program, Volunteer Maryland, which was actually the
Mm,
program that I went through. So that was kind of
cool.
fun. I went to, the HR records and looked through my file, and I was like, oh, I was a terrible AmeriCorps
Like,
member.
here I
Like
am.
my
Ah,
time card was awful.
yeah.
But so I had the privilege of having about 30 AmeriCorps members every year. And a lot of times, like their service year was hard. Like maybe they didn't like their service site. Maybe their
Yeah.
supervisor like never showed up or didn't help them. And so I was like, number one, stay in service and finish your service year, because
Yeah.
finishing is going to be a lot
Finish.
better than not. And I said,
Yeah.
take this time to learn how to not be a manager that treats people like crap. During this time,
Yeah.
learn how to find allies, learn how to make connections and networks. And they never liked that answer. They wanted me to go in as the director and be like, you
Fix
need to be
it.
nice to the
Yeah.
AmeriCorps
Fix
member. But I'm like,
it.
there's some reason that you are in this experience. So take that opportunity and figure out, because you're going to be getting the same lesson over and over and over until
Yeah.
you fix it
Until you
or until
learn
you
it.
learn it. And then you can move on to the next lesson, unfortunately, but that's the way life is. So I think, like, gosh, you're really giving us some really good nuggets, like for life, like you could always change your
Yeah.
mind.
Learn what you want and what you
Words
don't
of
want.
wisdom from Dana. You can always change your
Ah,
mind.
can
And
always change your mind. I've done that
sometimes,
so many times. So many
so
times.
yeah, so you learned that you did not want to be in the classroom. And so what did you do next?
So, of course, we're focusing on environmental things this
Yes, I
month.
should
Yes.
have said that. Yeah.
So I joke with people because spoiler alert, I work for City Year now.
I
But I
love that.
joke with I joke with core members sometimes because some people are like, man, I really am having a hard service year, or like I
Mm,
really don't like this. Like I don't know if I'm going to finish. And I really try to empathize. I'm like, you guys, it's a difficult and rewarding experience. You'll have those great days, those bad days. But at the end of the day, I came away from that experience like, wow, glad I finished that. Glad I
yes.
did that. Learned so much. I'm going to go live in the woods now. I need to get as far away from these windowless rooms
Yeah.
as I can. I was just like, and in the winter in Cleveland, it's like you go to work when it's dark, you come out when it's dark because your service days are so long. You got to get
Hmm.
those 1,700 hours. And I was like, I need to go into the woods.
That's so
So,
funny. I need to go
my
into the woods to
so I
rehab.
joke with people, yeah, I went and I lived in the woods after City Year because I just needed that recuperation time. And that's exactly what I did. So once I figured out that City Year was not the only AmeriCorps program, that there was like this whole world of different programs with different service term, lengths and different time commitments. And um, I found Northwest Youth Corps, NYC. Um, Shout out to Northwest Youth Corps because that was my gateway into essentially working in the outdoor industry. And I went and worked in the woods for 8 weeks. It was amazing. Uh, Full on like camping in the wilderness, building trails, cutting fallen logs off the trail with
Mhm.
crosscut saws, literally like the two-person crosscut
Oh
saws,
my gosh, how
because
fun.
it is illegal to use power tools in the wilderness, like that based on the definition of wilderness and the management of wilderness. No power tools back there. It's all the old-fashioned
Wow.
crosscut saws, and so it was amazing. But it was a great continuation of the teamwork that I learned in City Year.
Hmm.
I was working on a team for the first time in City Year. I was with them for these long, like 50 to 60-hour weeks. And then all of a sudden, I was thrown into a team where I was with them all the time.
Yeah.
We camped together. We would go out to the work site, hike into the work site together, and we would come back and have to cook dinner together and camp.
Wow.
Um,
Did you
so it
run
was a
into any
nice
crazy thing?
continuation.
Yeah. Did you run into anything crazy in the woods? What's like the creepiest thing that like happened? Or the coolest? I guess inspirational. I don't know. One of
Honestly,
both.
yeah, I think, well, the story that I always tell about my NYC experience is that we, to bring it back to like, just finish your service term. Like this one was 8 weeks long. Like this was a
Hmm.
really short summer experience. And my team, I had a team of five, and within the first 2 weeks, we lost two people. So it was just myself and one other
You
person and
dropped
our
out.
team
You
leader.
didn't like
They,
lose them in
yes,
the woods.
well, one of them disappeared in the night. Literally, we were in the wilderness. We were in, ironically, my life is full of connections. Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, which is where I, with my godparents, like had
Yeah.
this moment of like, I need to change my major. Like this is what I want to do.
Yes.
Um, so we were in Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, and this team member left us a note and hiked down the mountain in the middle of the night and had his girlfriend pick him up because he was like, I just can't do this anymore. But just left a note. So the next morning,
Whoa.
we're like, and of course our team leader is like, oh my God, like I'm responsible for this person. Like,
Yeah. Wow.
and then the second person who dropped out was just I think having a like needed some more. I think their parents, they were kind of young. Their parents thought that they needed a wilderness experience when really they probably just needed some like mental health resources. And he also didn't make it
It
past
was
the
just like,
second
I'm
week.
done.
And right. And so then we had to merge with another team that had lost some people. And so it was just this it was this lesson of just like rolling with the punches, because like
Yeah.
another day, another like, at one point it was myself and my other teammate, just the two of us, and we were like, well, only the strong survive. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. That's so crazy. Yes, thank you for bringing up and reminding us that this month we are focused on Earth justice and the environment. And so I'm having guests on that either served or are still working in the environmental. So we will frame the conversation a little bit around kind of how you were brought into working in the environment. And I love how you had that serendipitous moment where you were out in the woods and you're like, I'm going to change my major. And then you had
Mhm.
a service experience actually in that
In
same
that
area.
place, it
So
was
that's so
beautiful.
cool.
It
So
was,
you
oh
survived and got through those 8 weeks because you're still
yes,
here. I see you.
I'm here. I made it, and I loved it. I loved it. I was, as soon as that was done, I was like, I need to do more of this. This is amazing. Um, I had camped as a Girl Scout, but I hadn't really camped as an adult very much, and
Mhm.
definitely not like hike 9 miles in and camp. So that
That's a
was kind
different
of an
animal.
introduction. Yeah, I mean, we were on national forest lands, and it was just wow. It was an amazing experience, and that I was like, I need to continue this. So then we come to my next service experience, which was AmeriCorps NCCC.
Mhm.
And that was like, I mean, like I said, we're really progressing like in our teamwork abilities. uh NCCC is 10 months with 8 to 10 people, and you live with them, you travel with them, you work with them, you grocery shop with them, like
You
you
guys like
like go
live
down the list, you do
together.
everything
Yeah.
together for 10 months. And that was an amazing experience, a challenging experience. And I kid you not when I say I, a few years after the fact, literally just like apologized to my team leader like after the fact, like, I'm sorry, I was just a difficult person to manage. I realize that now.
I think I did that
But
too when I met up with my program manager. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just didn't understand what I was doing. And I was an adult. So I'm like, I was a difficult adult.
yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things now about it that I see now about these programs is like these are geared towards young adults. This is for 18 to 25-year olds.
Yeah.
That is a time when you're learning. That is a time when you're growing. That is a time when like you don't maybe have the best coping skills or have the best
Yeah.
like, and that's okay. And now we're all in that space where we can all, in my era of from my service, my team members, we can all look back and be like, yeah, we were young, we did the best we could. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't kill each other, we all made it through.
Bonus.
And my NCCC team, we didn't lose anybody, we all stuck it out. And so we were paired with, to continue this theme of like environment, we all applied for and were placed on the trail team. So NCCC, typically there's different project rounds, I think 3 to 4. Ours was a little different because we were the trail team, where you are assigned, and there's different regional campuses. I served out of the Sacramento campus, and the Sacramento campus services the whole Pacific region, as well as Hawaii. And so it was like one lucky crew that got to go to Hawaii and serve there, but and Alaska. So plug for NCCC, so like cool. You can really see the country through that program. And we served first in Salt Lake City, Utah, which was amazing. I had never been there. I mean, I got to explore a lot of the country through serving with Northwest Youth Corps and serving with NCCC combined. I served in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, and California, all places that I had never been to previously. Except for Washington State, which I had visited with my godparents. So it was, and again, coming as a Flatlander from Cleveland, Ohio, being like mountains and like looking around and being like, this is just incredible. So it expanded my worldview, expanded my the way I thought about the diversity of our country, in terms of geography, in terms of communities, and all of this. It was
I was going to actually say that when you mentioned that you were all over in different areas, that I have a geography and environmental studies degree, so I was studying the landscape and geography, and it's really like you can get it, like the birds are different, right? Like the trees, like,
yes. Oh my God.
And so I am on the East Coast now, but I grew up in California, and I forget when I go out back down to Southern California and I look at the plants and I'm like, oh my gosh, these look like Dr. Seuss plants. They're just funny looking, right? Like they just don't look real, because I'm used to like the East Coast now with like tons of, deciduous trees and, and everything. And I think that like anybody that's interested in a cheap way of seeing the country, like sign up for NCCC, because y'all get like an amazing experience, and you get to see, and then you're stationed in those other areas too, and you're in the community. So not only do you get this experience of the landscape, it's also of the people.
Right.
And I think that is, especially for young 20-year-olds, that like sometimes I forget who I was talking to. I feel like it was Brittany, I think, from the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, who had never left it was somebody, they'd never left their like Connecticut, right? And then they went across country and they did this amazing experience, and it was incredible, like mind-blowing. So so you did a full year. What was something that stood out? Obviously the landscape and everything, but what was like, did you have one of those pivotal moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't do this, and somebody came in and was like, Dana, we can help you, like, or like, I don't know, how'd you get through it?
I think for me, what was really cool was my team. We were so fortunate, and I imagine and I hope that this was, that this is a common experience for NCCC teams. One of the things that we would do when we get to an area is we would reach out into the community, whether it be, I was one of the I had a recruiter role, where we would go and say, hey, can we come to the library or to this high school and talk about what we're doing and talk about this experience? And, that was really cool. But we would also sometimes kind of on our own, like I was really involved in I don't know if you've heard of the couch surfing community.
Yes.
So I was really into couch surfing at the time. And so I would make a post in that on that like forum in that community whenever we would get to a new area and just say, hey, I'm here, for X amount of time with this NCCC, with this AmeriCorps group. If you know of any happenings, or if you whatever, basically just saying, hey, we're here, we're not from around here, what's good. And we met some really cool people, some of whom invited us, to different activities. This one woman was like, I have this whole like riverfront property. Do you guys want to come over and like camp here and hang out here? And just the number of people who, once they figured out who we were, why we were here, what we were doing, because they're like, oh, we're here to work with, whatever it may be, and our first assignment was non-trail related. They were like, you're the trail crew, but we're going to give you a taste of what normal NCCC is like. So we were working with the Utah Food Bank and in Salt Lake City. And so, when we would say, hey, we're a group of, 18 to 25-year-olds, we're here to serve with Utah Food Bank for this amount of time. Especially around the holidays, the number of people that were like, would you like to come to my house and have can we host you for, it was really wonderful. And again, really putting that emphasis on community. And City Year certainly City Year has a very strong AmeriCorps culture. That's City Year specific, I should say. The City Year has its very own strong culture. But one of their values is the concept of Ubuntu, which is that I am because you are. We are all connected, and my humanity is tied to your humanity. And I really feel like that is really what this service experiences have all pointed me towards, is that we're all connected, and that life is so much more meaningful when you're doing something as part of a community to better a community, instead of just like I said, that like, here I am, I'm an individual, I'm doing this, I just accomplished this. It's so much more meaningful when I could step back and be like, this is what my team did. We built this. We built this for this community. And so
and you mentioned at the beginning, you're like, spoiler alert, I'm with City Year again. So after you did NCCC, did you do another service term anywhere, or where did you go?
I did.
I was gonna say, I feel like there's something else in here.
There's more. Yes, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. So AmeriCorps actually helped me get my dream job at the time, right? And I know, and you and I have had a conversation previously about the concept of dream jobs, and like, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. And then what? So pretty much as soon as I started working on public lands, I was working first with Northwest Youth Corps on Forest Service lands, then with NCCC, we were assigned to work with the California Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. Excuse me. And so that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, like I could be, I could work. I could work on either with I could be a Forest Service, work with the Bureau of Land Management. I could be in the National Park Service. I could be, and so I started trying to apply to a bunch of different, especially trail. I was working in the trails, working on trail work through NCCC. So I was focusing on those kind of jobs, and I was applying and applying, and I was getting nothing back. I was like, what's going on? I have all this great experience, everything that's on this job description, like I know how to do. What's going on? And it took someone, a wonderful person, they know who they are, in the California Bureau of Land Management, that took our team, sat us down, and was like, I'm going to teach you how to apply to federal jobs, because it's way different than applying to private sector jobs. And he essentially gave us all the tips and tricks of, how to structure your resume, which is, he's like, all the conventional resume wisdom you've ever heard, throw it out the window. You want a huge federal resume, you want to be really detailed, you want to have everything on there you've ever done. And after that, I started getting referred to hiring managers, like, oh, it's
Oh,
finally working.
interesting.
So shout out to shout out to him for doing that for us, because
Yeah.
I was getting so frustrated. We would be out of cell range most of the time, and then we'd have our weekend where we could go into the little town we were in at the time and sit in a coffee shop for 5 hours and like apply to jobs, or like, make contact with the
Yeah.
outside world. And I would open my laptop and I'd be like, not referred, not referred, not referred, man, what's going on? And so after that, I eventually landed a seasonal job with the National Park Service, back in near my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. Cuyahoga Valley National Park picked me up as a seasonal community engagement park ranger.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that job, I found out later, because of my city year service experience.
That's awesome.
Because so I had worked in the Cleveland Public Schools. They were like, awesome, saw this on your resume. We're going to be sending you as the community engagement ranger to the Cleveland Public Schools. We love that you have that experience. And so again, I ran away from city year. I was like, I'm going into the woods. But it has been one of the most beneficial experiences in terms of giving me hard and soft skills in my future work experiences.
And I think that also, like, you're bringing up so many great points, because somebody might go, you went into city year thinking, do I want to be a teacher? But you had no idea that there's a community engagement ranger that works for the National Park Service that goes into the
and it
schools.
worked out so well.
Yeah. And so I think too, like, if you've made it this far in the podcast, another takeaway from this is just like, keep your opportunities, keep your mind open. Don't close off to like, this is what I need to do to get here to do this, because we all have a special thing to do while we're here. And we may think it's one thing, but the universe or God or whoever is going to, I like to say, they're going to sheepdog you into like what you're actually supposed to do. And so it's just better to let that happen and stay open to that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I got totally off I completely didn't answer your question, but so my first job with the National Park Service, excellent, great, but it was a 10-week position.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leads us to actually my other service experience, which was with American Conservation Experience, or ACE. So I was so thrilled. I was finally an actual park ranger. Oh my God, this is great. I was wearing the whole uniform and stuff, the Smokey the Bear hat. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then my contract kind of came to an end. It was like, all right, well, we'll try to hire you back next season. But leading up to that, I had been, because again, my experience was really focused in trail work. So I had been kind of like chatting up the maintenance people and being like, so what's your, like, so do you have any like trail stuff? Like, you got any, what's going on with that? Like, I know we have trails here. And so because I had kind of been asking around and chatting with people, there was someone who was in an AmeriCorps position through ACE, supporting the trail department, and they got offered a full employee position and left their service term unfinished, which, like, great for them. It's awesome. I know AmeriCorps doesn't want you to do that, but like, hey, it led to your, the job you want. And so they had this service term that was like, there's still a couple months left on this contract. Would you want to hop into that? And they're like, oh, and you get a stipend, and then you'll get a Siegel. And I'm like, no, I don't get an education award anymore. I know how this works. But yes, I'll take it.
Yes.
And so I finished her service term. And then the same thing happened to me. They offered me a full, after that was done, they offered me a job on the trail crew. And it was
Mm-hmm.
great. And I was like, this is amazing. So again, AmeriCorps, it opens doors. It, it was hard for me when I was like, oh, I finally a park ranger, I get the whole uniform. And then I went back to intern status. Yeah. And then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
now you get to wear the AmeriCorps t-shirt instead.
Yeah.
And by that time, I won't lie to you, I was like, I'm really tired of being the perpetual intern. Like I'm in my getting close to late 20s. Like, can I get a real job yet? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sick of this. But again, it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
It kept my face and my name, on top of mind. And so, and what I was trying to demonstrate is like, I'm here, I'm ready to work. I know this contract ended, but hey, here I am popping up again here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
keep my name, keep my face top of mind, like I said.
And like what I said at the beginning, where, my service year was important to me and the work that I did was awesome and fantastic, but it really taught me how to connect with people and network
Yes.
and make sure that people, I think when we were chatting a couple weeks ago, you had said I made sure that everybody knew my name and my face. And
Yep.
I was,
And you're like, me too.
I still am the same way. Like for all those folks that know me and that are watching this, they'll be like, yep. I mean, literally last night,
like, yep.
This is crazy. Last night I was at a bar and this was it was a rooftop bar. It was like inside, outside. It was just gorgeous. And I looked over across the bar and I was like, wait a minute, is that Brad? And it was my, not my first car, but it was my site supervisor when I was an AmeriCorps member at Quiet Waters Park. He was the superintendent. And he did the same thing. He looked over at me. He's like, Nikki? And I'm like, oh my God. But like, and now he's at a different park, right? And I mentioned to him, I'm like, I'm still in the area and we do have to have meetings every now and then. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Just give me a call and we have rooms. And so for all of you all out there, like just continue to connect with people and stay in touch and stay relevant and stay positive. And, things just like Dana's demonstrating through your all of your different experiences. It's like, it's so funny how your story's like, I left city year to go run in the mountains and it was the same mountains that my godparents gave me. And then I went back to city year and then the city year brought me out into the mountains.
It's amazing.
So now is this the point where you're at your dream job? Is this the?
Yes. So I got a permanent job. I was seasonal to start, right? Where it was like, here's a great job with great benefits, but it's only 6 months long and then figure it out. So I got permanent status with the National Park Service and I relocated to San Antonio, Texas to take that job. And it was, again, like I finally did it. I've been for years just like that permanent gig. Like when I get that,
I'm a real adult now.
And I got it and it was great. It brought me here. I worked in that job for 2 years here in San Antonio, Texas. And I learned that unfortunately and I had kind of known this, but in the federal government, in the National Park Service, perhaps specifically, I can't speak to other agencies necessarily, to kind of move up, you have to move around. And, I obviously knew that enough that I was like, okay, well, I need to move to San Antonio to take this permanent job. Okay. But it quickly became clear, and it was an entry-level position, of course, which is fine. I was just excited to be there. But as time went on, I was like, okay, so this really, is there, like, what do I do now? Like, I did it. But what
do I do
now? Like, what am I working towards now? And I realized that I wanted to put down roots in San Antonio, that I didn't want to live the life of the park hopper.
Mm,
And that I was like, one cross country move was enough. Like that, I never want to do it again. Or like, I want to
never.
be really careful about making that decision again, because what a pain.
Yeah.
Um, but and I had to kind of separate my sense of self from my job, and
Yeah.
kind of come to this realization that I can be an environmentalist, I can be a naturalist, I can be the biggest nature nerd, but I don't have to be a park ranger to be those things.
Mm.
And
That's,
so
you're just I'm serious. Like these nuggets that you're dropping are, it's so important. I did the same thing where I was so intertwined into like what I did for work and what I
Mhm.
did and who I saw myself as, that
Yeah.
it 100% led to burnout. And I found
Yeah.
myself in the same situation where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this
Mhm.
anymore. And I had to take
Yeah.
a hard left and just be like, nope,
Mhm.
nope. And now what ended up happening, and I'm sure this is going to be your part of the story, is like these wonderful, like amazing experience. Not that I wasn't having amazing experience. I loved everything
Mhm.
that I was doing, but
Yeah.
now it's opened up opportunities for me to do things like this, like sit on a
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon and chat
I
with
love
AmeriCorps
it.
alums across the country,
Yeah.
because I'm not burnt out and stressed out. And so for
Mm.
all of you that feel like, if you've made it this far, because we're in 50 minutes now, this is
I know. I'm
amazing.
sorry. We're really going.
It's okay. But for any of you, if you've made it this far, like if you find yourself like just like you just need to make a change, it's okay. Like again, it goes
Yeah.
back to being sheepdogged. There's a reason I felt burnout and then I needed to stop
Mhm.
doing what I was doing to do something else.
It's all
And
good
so
information.
you were at that pivotal moment where you had to like question everything kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I ironically, and I know we're like, you can edit out all my rambling as much as you need, but but the funny thing is that I came to this job with city year, not kind of not quite by accident. I was looking and I was starting to apply to other jobs and exploring this, like, who am I if I'm not a park ranger? Like, what am I gonna do? Um, but when I first moved to San Antonio, I didn't really think about it, but as I was starting to kind of reactivate my networks outside of just the park service. I was very focused on like, this is what my career is going to be. So I'm laser focused on this network, these people, parks, parks, parks.
Mhm.
And when I started to kind of realize like, there's other things I can do, there's other things I can be,
Yeah.
there's I've been so fortunate to have such an amazing wide network. And when I kind of started looking around and looking outside of just park life, I was like, wait a second, San Antonio, I don't they have a city year site here? And I was looking it up and I was like, maybe they have some like alumni events I can go to or something. And that's how I stumbled on City Year San Antonio builds a playground every
Mm.
year. They partner with the Rotary Club and they build a playground. And I was
Okay.
like, oh, cool. Like, I'll sign up for that. I'll go build a playground. Like, let's do it. And while I was there, I was like, maybe they have some jobs. Let me see what they have.
Yep.
And I ended up, uh, it was a temporary, I mean, back in that, like, back in that place of like, this is a temporary position. It was like a 10-month, not a service term. It was a 10-month job. Um, and I was like, well, why not? I'll apply.
And
I like city year.
that too, in and of itself, it's like taking the leap of faith, understanding that like this is a
Yeah,
temporary job
it's temporary, right?
and I
And it
have
was
a
long
full-time
enough. It was like
job,
10 months. Yeah, yeah.
and then it's
It was
like, well, no,
kind of
I think
scary.
that I want to take this. And again,
Mhm.
trusting that like that little nudge, there's something there. So good
Yeah,
on you. Good on you.
yeah. So now ironically, just to kind of bring things together a little bit, now I work for City Year, but I just recently, because March is, we have AmeriCorps week in March, but City Year goes a little crazier, and we call March, the whole month of March, Corps Appreciation Month. Not
Nice.
just, we celebrate AmeriCorps week in there, but it's just like, hey, March, we're going to take March to appreciate our AmeriCorps members. And so one of the things that I got the opportunity to do was take a group of AmeriCorps members to the park I used to work at and give them a tour. And we did a 3-mile hike together, kind of like a guided walk. And it was just such a great experience. I was like, wow, what a way to like bring these worlds together for me to share that naturalist, that, nerdy nature and history side of me with my current, in my current job. And that was another moment of like, I don't have to work for the parks. I don't have to be a park ranger to be an advocate for parks, to be an advocate for the environment, to be, to bring people into this space. And at the end, I was like, I should have asked, who has never been to this place before? And so many people raised their hands.
Wow.
Like, yes, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good place to jump off the last couple of questions that I have. Being that like, there was probably just this great appreciation for being in that park with these folks, and it would be different than if you were a park ranger, right? Because it's like you were doing your job. For this, did it, like, I can imagine that the whole experience, like, you just kind of saw things differently. Were there some members that like had never even really gone to a park before like that?
It was because here in San Antonio, it's a national historical park, San Antonio Missions National Historical Park. So it is, if you live in San Antonio, it's someplace you probably went to in 4th grade and then maybe forgot about. And if you're from out of town, maybe you never even made it down there. It's all the way on the south side of San Antonio. So there were a lot of folks who had never been. I'm not sure if anybody had like never been to a historical park, or if anybody had just never been to a national park. I don't know, but it was cool to be like, oh, you've actually never been to this place, and this is really central to like San Antonio's identity, or the San Antonio missions, the Spanish colonial history of San Antonio. So I'm looking forward for our next batch of AmeriCorps members when we have our basic training academy. I'm going to be the voice going like, I want to take them to this historical park, because it really, especially for folks who are from out of town, it's going to help them understand that San Antonio, like this place was built on the back of colonialism, of there's a really complex history that can help us understand why things are the way they are, how things are the way they are. And I'm already dreaming of like, well, we could have some service projects and collaborate with like the food bank down there, because they manage the historical farm fields. And so so I mean, AmeriCorps alums can do so much.
And that, like, we can always find a way to bring some type of service into whatever job we're doing. And I think that that's such an important point to make, that no matter what we're doing, we can always circle back to one of, an experience that we had in AmeriCorps. So one of the questions I like to wrap up with, we have over 1.2 million AmeriCorps members who have gone through service. Now I'm sure not all of them are with us anymore, but
right.
What could you envision for us alumni? What do you think we could do collectively as a voice across the country? I know.
So much. Oh my God.
2 minutes or less.
I'm like, everybody plant a tree. If every single one of us planted one tree every year, like we could reforest our country.
I love that. AmeriCorps Plant a Tree Day. Like maybe we can have a challenge like that next year in 2024, during AmeriCorps week, that every AmeriCorps member plants a tree.
Go out and plant a tree.
Okay, you hear that, everybody? Next year, 2024.
Get ready.
Or maybe we'll do it this year. When's Arbor Day? Is it in November? September?
That's a good question. I'll have to Google that.
Maybe, yeah,
I
maybe
should
we can do it
know.
on Arbor Day.
Yeah, because
I love that.
wow, that would be so powerful just in itself. But I mean, AmeriCorps members, and I meant to bring up to you that just yesterday, one of my coworkers sent me something, and I'm not on Facebook much, but it was a Facebook event. And he was like, "Hey, did you see this? Somebody's starting an AmeriCorps, a San Antonio AmeriCorps alumni group." And I was like, perfect. Especially
That's
after I
awesome.
had this conversation with you. I was like, I can't wait to see,
Yeah.
to get plugged into this community, to see what we can do together just here in San Antonio. And then thinking
Hmm.
about what we can do across the country as AmeriCorps alums. Like, we can be a force for good.
Yay!
Let's
A
do
force for
it.
good. Yes.
Let's do it.
Well, I'm going to find out when Arbor Day is and then see if we haven't passed it already and see if we can make that challenge for AmeriCorps alums to plant a tree on on Arbor Day. It'll be
That would be great.
Arbor. Well, I can't figure. I know it's not going to
Amera
work.
Arbor. Yeah.
um, and then finally, my final question, especially for this this particular April podcast experience of environmental justice and love for the environment. What do you want all people to know about being outside or observing? And I'll say nature with air quotes because
Yeah.
folks,
We
we
are
are
nature.
mammals. We are
We are
nature.
nature.
We
We
are
are one
made of
with
the
nature.
same stuff.
Mhm.
So what
I
do you want
think
people to know?
I would tell people that there's, um, you don't have to have special expertise to go out and enjoy nature, to go out and do something good for the environment, right? I think there's a lot of, sometimes it can be intimidating, like, oh, I don't have the right gear, or I don't have the right clothes, or I don't know what I'm doing. During lockdown, I was one of, I'm sure, many people who started paying a lot more attention, like we're looking out our windows, right? Not really
Yeah.
going out so much among people, but seeking that connection with nature. And I started paying a lot more attention to birds. My dad is a huge birder and like
Mm.
bird nerd. And I never really, it was just like, if I saw a cool hawk, I'd be like, oh, look.
Yeah.
But when I started paying attention, it was just really cool because it's something you don't need to be an expert. You can just start paying attention to what's around you and tapping
Hmm.
into that sense of wonder of like, oh my God, we coexist with all this. Like sometimes we, like you said, we conceptualize ourselves as separate, but we're all sharing this earth. And it's really cool when you start paying attention to like all the little creatures and all of the, I love the good metaphor of like, a random here in Texas it's like cactus, but like things that just grow up in the middle of in really incongruous places. The
Yes.
tree growing up through the crack in the sidewalk and things like that. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a park ranger. You don't have to be a
Yeah.
naturalist. You can just go outside in your own neighborhood and just be present and just tap into, like I said, that sense of wonder.
Hmm.
And it's really restorative. Like
Yeah.
it's
I
really
love that.
helpful.
And I love that. That is such good advice. I oftentimes, if I'm on Zooms all day or video conferencing for work, I'll just go outside and stare at the
Oh God.
clouds and just
Yeah.
look around. And I, that's
Yeah.
very much of a privilege that I get. But Dana, this has been
Mhm.
so wonderful. I feel like I could just
Yeah,
talk to
thank
you
you so much.
forever. Your,
Yeah, you
your,
gotta stop me somewhere.
it's
Just
like
keep going.
that infinite sign is like your like
Mhm.
work AmeriCorps experience. It just kind of loops in and of
Yes,
itself.
it's
So
it's been really rewarding.
that's so
So
great.
thank
Well,
you so
thank you for
much.
thank you for taking the morning and chatting with us here on which I'm
Mhm.
changing soon, the AmeriCorps connections. And if anybody who is in the San Antonio area or wants to get in touch with you, maybe they have some questions about city year, what would
Yeah,
be the best way for people to get in touch with you? And I'll put this all in the show notes.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share my email. I am going to be focusing on building community partnerships within San Antonio for city year. and working with prospective organizations and prospective AmeriCorps members. If you're interested, or you know a young person who isn't sure what they want to do, this is a great way for them to not only earn funds to help them in future education opportunities if they want, but also just have that space of growing into who they are and figuring out what they want to do and getting great valuable work experience.
That's great. Thank you
That's
so
my
much,
little
Dana.
plug.
And thank you all for hanging in there. This was a really great and dynamic
It was a
conversation.
long
So
one.
we will be back. Yeah, it's all good though. We'll be back next week to share another story of an AmeriCorps alum who spent their time serving the environment. So thank you all.
Thanks so much.